before going to issue six, we're going to roll a clip about our main man, Alan Moore. So get ready. Here we go.
Do I see a hint of an ego problem creeping in here? Might you say that you had just the slightest touch of a messiah complex?
Well, would I have a haircut like this if I didn't? I think we're all entitled to a little messiah complex of our own, as long as it doesn't involve taking up arms or sort of going around and crucifying anybody else.
So, who in this vast world of ours is this doing the slightest bit of good for? Could it be you, perhaps?
It's good for me, obviously, and hopefully it's maybe good for the people who read it. Yeah, we get letters from sort of kids. These are not sort of wild-eyed Manson converts, but they're kids who may have read something that I've written and decide that, yeah, perhaps they have changed their mind about this facet or that facet. We get a lot of kids writing in to disagree, and that's healthy as well, as long as they're thinking. I don't want everybody to agree with me, I just want people to think.
What I'm trying to do is to take some possibly unpopular political beliefs and to make them accessible, to give ideas that are quite large and complex to children in a form that they can understand. I would much rather put out my stories to children, to people who do not share my political beliefs at all, because in that instance I am not preaching to the converted. Given that I've got, say, 500,000 readers a month, if only 10% of those, or 1% of those, take notice of what I'm saying, that is still a very large number of people.
Wow, the Alan Moore swag, right? I saw you guys talking about that. Yeah, and by the way, this documentary was filmed before his falling out with DC, like right after Watchmen, I think. He was riding so fucking high in his career. This is a peak Moore, peak Papa Moore, before things went shitty. Things went sideways for him with DC, when the romance was still alive and like there was just so much, the sky, it was just blue skies, you know. You could just see it like irradiating out of him. I love all his swag. He's adorable. He's a peach. Okay, so now let's start with issue 6 overview. We're going to go into issue 6. Issue 6 is called The Abyss Gazes Also. This is a Rorschach Origins issue. Much like we had our Dr. Manhattan Origins issue, now we have Rorschach. And it is told non-linearly, although this time it's told through a series of like flashbacks. But now in jail, Walter Kovacs is being treated by psychoanalyst Dr. Malcolm Long, who gradually uncovers the whys and hows this man transformed into the masked vigilante known as Rorschach over 3 sessions in 3 days. Through a series of flashbacks, we see 4 pivotal moments in Walter's life that led to the creation of Rorschach. His abusive and poverty-stricken early life, the violent incident that got him out of his negative situation, the Kinney Genovese dress, and the ultra-dark 1975 kidnapping case that unleashed the true Rorschach, the moment when this heightened personality took over. And over the course of these revelations, the good doctor becomes shook and finds his shallow life fall apart very quickly in the face of oblivion. So, he is a dickhead, guys. I don't like him. He's the worst in this. Let's go to the book cam. Come on. The way that this face is drawn, I just want to punch him in the face. He's such a cocky idiot dickhead who's not even on this man's level, who's like treating him like he's retarded or something. You know, it's like treating like, oh, can you do this for me? And it's like, I'm not stupid. I'm not cooperating. I'm not going to cooperate with you. I'm going to do the least amount possible, you know? But he's just like, doesn't even understand the shark. He's in the room with a shark, you know? He's just swimming around and is this blubbery seal, you know, and has no idea what's going on, you know? No idea. And he's here to make a buck, you know? It's like, he's not here to help this guy. Like, he's Dr. Phil, you know? Like, he's trying to come in and, write a book. And then he's giving Rorschach tests. So he can say Rorschach's or some bullshit, you know, some marketing stuff. I mean, it's just like the worst. Like, this guy's the worst, in my opinion. By the way, also another fun fact that I wanted to talk about. So we're going to skip over here a little bit, and we're going to talk about the dress, okay? So Rorschach, he's working at this garment factory when he's 16. He finds this dress that's this weird fabric that's to where the black and the white never mix together. And he thinks it's beautiful, you know, very, very beautiful. And, like, this guy's, like, street guy, you know, this guy's, like, so, like, he doesn't really, he's not on that beauty tip that much. So for him to find something, like, beautiful is just, like, wow. Like, he's, like, really into it. And the part of the reason why he loves this and why it's like, oh, it doesn't ever mix, it doesn't ever turn into gray, you know, and it's just like, yeah, because, you know, has this horrible memory of seeing his mom, you know, as a prostitute, having some weird, traumatic, painful, kinky, whatever the fuck sex, you know, gross sex, and then he's like just like hit for it and like for ruining it, and it's just like the worst, you know. And it's like, of course he doesn't want to see anybody mixing, you know, like he doesn't. I mean, especially when you go back, and I know this is from the supplemental, but you guys read that right? You should have. You know, he's got this nightmare. He's having nightmares about people that are all tangled up together, you know. It's just like, oh man, that moment in his life, like, just like really like fucked his shit up, you know, like it really fucked his shit up. But the kitty Genovese, where he's talking about this woman ordered this dress and then she didn't come pick it up, and then later, a few years later, he sees the woman's name again, and she's in the newspaper, and she was killed while she was raped and killed while her neighbors looked on, you know. And he was just like, I was so disgusted by this that is why I became a superhero, you know. That's why I decided to become Rorschach, and I made this face. And that's a real case. Like, that's something that happened in our own real world. Like, you can look it up. Like, this really happened. Like, 38 neighbors, like, heard and or saw something. Nobody called the cops. Nobody did anything to help. Everybody let this girl just fucking get raped and murdered, like, right in front of her own door. You know, it's just like this crazy thing that, like, kicked off this big study about the bystander effect, you know, like, that's, like, this whole thing. Which is funny because it's like, I love that this real world thing kicked off, you know, some psychoanalyst, like, what is this? Some, you know, Dr. Malcolm Long got in there, you know, some fucking space brain, and was just like, oh, and came up with the bystander effect, which is interesting. You can Google that and get into that. But the thing about, like, the thing that I thought was really cool about Rorschach is that, you know, through this character, Alan Moore is showing how people get fucked up and then how they deal with it, you know, and how a lot of it comes from your early life. This guy was, like, born in the worst circumstances, like, the worst circumstances. He was an unwanted child. The father had skipped out. The mother had to turn to prostitution to just take care of the child and her. The mother resented this kid for that, you know, but was still doing it, and then became abusive towards him, let out her frustrations and her anger, being forced, you know, into a life of prostitution and vice and, like, falling into this bullshit. She takes it out on him, you know, shit rolls downhill. And she snaps on him when he interrupts her and a John and, like, ruins a sale for her. And that moment in his life snapped something on in him. And that's something that, like, I was watching this documentary about, or this show that was about serial killers, and it talks about how there is a gene. There's, like, a gene for it that they found. And that, you know, you can have it and you can pass on this gene, but it doesn't get turned on unless something shitty happens to you, where you have a snap, where you have a break in your childhood, you know? Like, if you have a chill childhood and your parents are cool and, you know, you're not abused and everything's pretty chill, then, like, you'll still have a little bit of serial killer in you, but you're not going to go and, like, kill people and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not going to do that. But if you do have that, then, and something happens to you and you snap and you're exposed to darkness, like, it turns on this thing in you, you know, it turns on this, like, gene that, like, makes you a fucking murderer and, like, a sociopath and stuff. And so I feel like this is, like, I mean, Rorschach's obviously, I mean, he's killed people and he feels no remorse for it. I mean, he is, like, disconnected. He is a sociopath. I mean, he's essentially kind of like a Dexter, where he's just like, I was exposed to a lot of violence and darkness when I was a kid, and I am forever traumatized by it. I will never not be traumatized by it. And the only thing I can do with it is try to funnel it into something that's good, towards a good end, and not like I'm gonna hurt people no matter what. Like, I'm gonna hurt people no matter what. But it might as well be hurting the bad people if I'm gonna hurt somebody, if I'm gonna hurt somebody. And, it's like you see, like, his mother snaps on him, and then he snaps on that kid, and, like, fucking fucks that kid up. Man, this was, like, such a good, I love this, like, oh, he's such an ugly little kid. He's an ugly, redheaded little stepchild, the worst, the bottom of the barrel. And he just goes for it, man. He just goes for it. He knows, like, he has no illusions, though. He's like, I gotta fight for myself. He's a wild animal. He's a wild animal. And so he snaps on him, and then later on in his life, it's like these snaps, like, once they happen to you, like, they kind of keep happening to you. Like, that's the thing. It's like this karmic echo, that, like, this loop that you get caught in. Like when something traumatic or violent happens to you. And so you repeat those things.
Hey, Rorschach, you're pretty famous, right? Boy, I'd sure like your autograph. I got my autograph book right here in my pocket.
And so we see him, again, it's like, so you saw the childhood thing, but then now, like, he's this guy is like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, and this guy, he does the same exact thing. He's like, I've already done this. I already did this test and I already passed it, so I'm just gonna put a fryer in your face, and just like, I don't give a fuck. Like, he kind of reminds me of like Ender from Ender's Game, where it's like, if Ender makes a move, like, it's a final move. Like, you don't want to coerce him into making a move, and if you do, then it's going to be a move that's going to be final, and like, that's how he is. It's like, don't work this guy up, because if you do, like, he's gonna lose his shit, and like, it's not gonna be good for like anybody. So he's just like reflecting this violence, and then later on, then we finally get, oh my god, everybody, the dog story, I mean, come on. This was another snapping point. This was his final snapping point before he transcended from being a snotty little piece of shit kid, piece of rat trash, into being divine trash. He goes from being mortal trash into being sacred trash when he investigates this little girl's disappearance and figures out that the guy who was holding her fed her to his German shepherds, killed her and fed her to get rid of the evidence. And he goes outside and he kills the dogs. And he says that it was Kovacs who said mother, then muffled under latex. It was Kovacs who closed his eyes. It was Rorschach who opened them again. So it's like when he had the knife up, he was still Walter. And then after he made this sacrifice, again, another sacrifice, he was reborn as Rorschach, and the Rorschach personality took over. And ever since, okay, so now that he's this kind of sacred being, which I loved in the other thing where he's like, oh, I want to be above weakness, I want to be above lust, I want to be above all of these, the things that actually Dr. Manhattan are above, like Dr. Manhattan's kind of above that, but he doesn't make him any happier, and that's the thing. Like, Rorschach is like, oh, if I'm above all these things, it makes me happier, but like, I don't know, maybe it really doesn't, but who knows? Anyways, that's total speculation. But now that he's Rorschach, full time, and Walter is just his disguise, which I love. I think that's really great. Sometimes I feel like the comic book girl personality is taking over my life a little bit. Like, Danica gets a little freaked out because she's like not ready for that shit. But I was like, I'm not even gonna lie. The thing that I love about Rorschach is that he is a purveyor of truth. He is a truth teller, and it's usually not going to be truth that you're going to want to hear, but he's going to tell it to you anyways.
Is what happened to Kitty Genovese really proof that the whole of mankind is rotten? there are good people too, like you? Me? Oh, well, I wouldn't say that. No, you just think it. Why are you spending so much time with me, Doctor? Because I care about you, and I want to make you well.
And there's a couple of like really good truth times with Uncle R. Like one time when he's talking to the Dr. Long, and you know, he's like, good people like you, you know, and he's like, oh, the doctor's like, oh, I wouldn't say that. No, I'm not a good person. And Rorschach is like, no, you just think you are, you know, but you're not. Like, you're not. Like, you think you are. You think you're good people. And then goes on to be like, but you're a shallow bitch because the only reason you're talking to me is because you want to write a book so you can get fame for yourself. And I'm famous and you're just writing on my coattails and you're just trying to do all this stuff. Like, you're not here to help me. So don't sit here and act and like, don't sit here and insult me and act like you're here to help me. I see right through you. You're total bullshit. Like, you are total bullshit. And I was just like, oh, it's just so good. And also, I liked it when he was talking about the comedian, where he says, you know, once a man has seen it, he can never turn his back on it. He can never pretend it doesn't exist, no matter who orders him to look away. We do not do this thing because it is permitted. We do it because we have to. We do it because we are compelled. You know, we do it because we are compelled. And, fuck, that was just like such wisdom, you know, such wisdom. It's like, if you see a crazy person being crazy and doing like crazy shit and like pulling stunts and stuff, it is really because they're compelled and there's something wrong with them. They're compelled. Like, I don't know, if you see somebody who's just like artists, like, you have to be compelled to want to sit there and draw at a desk. Like, you have to be compelled to be, you know, like, and that's that compulsion. And it is a compulsion that's in you where you're doing it to find some sort of peace, you know, like you do it because you have to. You're not drawing because, oh, you want people to approve your drawings. Like, you're drawing because you have to, and it makes you feel better and it keeps you balanced as a person, you know. And he does this because he has to. And it kind of taps into like, we all do what we have to, you know, like everything we do because we have to, you know, and like, what are we all compelled by? You know, it brings up all these really interesting questions. Also, man, he really like fucks this doctor shit up. Later on, he's talking about oblivion, and it's just like really great. He says, born from oblivion, bear children, hellbound as ourselves, go into oblivion. There is nothing else. Existence is random, has no pattern save what we imagine after staring at it for too long. No meaning save what we choose to impose. The rudderless world is not shaped by vague metaphysical forces. It is not God who kills the children, not fate that butchers them, or destiny that feeds them to dogs. It's us. Only us. Oh, man. Like, Papa Moore is really putting it down there for you. He's just really putting it down there for you. This was so good. And this guy is just like, oh, man. It's like, you want to stare into the abyss? Okay, but it stares back at you, and you are going to be forever changed by it. And once you see it, you can never unsee it, and you will always be tarnished by it. And it's like that spot on the smiley face, you know? It's the blood on the smiley face. It's like this reality, like we want to create such beauty and like all this stuff, but really it's just like there's violence at the end of it, like at the core of it. Like, it's just the cannibalistic Moloch, you know, like reality, the eternal now is just like this like God that eats its own children, you know, constantly to regenerate itself, you know. It's the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. Really intense stuff from Uncle Rorschach, guys. Uncle Rorschach. I loved in this NYPD files that we find out that in his pockets, and I thought this was really interesting, he has 5 individually wrapped cubes of sweet chariot chewing sugar. And he also has 1 broken bottle Nostalgia Cologne for Men. Nostalgia Cologne for Men. And also, okay, this is really fun. If you go back to the last issue, right, when they bust him, because I noticed this, but I didn't get it, and now I get it this time. Okay. They go, boy, he stinks. Is that aftershave? You know, and he's like, no, you know, is that after? So the bottle must have burst, and it's leaking, and the policeman's like, what is that? Like, oh my God. So the implication here, I would say that the implication here, and also the fact that the nostalgia poster was behind where his like hat and gloves were stored, that, Alan Moore is saying that this guy, even though he's a sacred being, the little spot in his sunshine is the fact that he is also running off nostalgia. He's also running off desire. Like he wants to be like transcending desire is like really like the path towards enlightenment, and he's not. He's also like he's stayed, but the thing is, Rorschach already knows that. But it's funny that he wears nostalgia. He wears nostalgia, like that's his perfume is nostalgia, and it makes more sense, I think, when you start reading like this Charlton confidential about my parents that he wrote when he was 11, where he talks about, his mom said that his dad left because they argued about President Truman and that she didn't like him. And so the kid who's like stuck with this like shitty abusive mom, of course he's going to idolize his dad and be like, oh, he left because mom sucks, And I guess because mom sucks and she's abusing me, then dad's like, this idea is the best. And if he likes President Truman, then I like President Truman, And like, what did President Truman do? President Truman dropped the bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And in this, he's saying, it's like, yes, and I think that he was right, and all this stuff. And you see, like, this is where his right-wing shit came from. It's just, like, nostalgia stuff from his childhood. Like, it just comes from his childhood, guys. Like, he was 11, and he had these dreams about his dad, and he's funneled these dreams and these ideals, into Rorschach. And it's just, oh, my gosh, it's so good. He's powered by nostalgia, so that's his, nostalgia is the spot in his little pen, Curtis, you say Make America Great Again movement. Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And people are eating nostalgia. I mean, have you guys seen South Park? Have you seen the member berries? It's like we're all being driven by nostalgia, like right now especially. Like there's so much of it around us all the time. A new Star Wars every year. It's just like crazy how much nostalgia we're being sold. And nostalgia is a lie. It's an illusion. It's a good feeling, and you can take that nostalgia and that feeling and you can use it and power like really cool things in your life, but you can also become enslaved to it, and you don't want to do that, and it's like, and you also want to live in the real world. You don't want to like just let yourself be manipulated by these dickheads, like through your emotions. Like that's not cool. Yeah, but it's like, it is the rose-colored glasses though. You're right. That's what nostalgia is where you look back and you're like, that time was really cool, but like the thing is like we forget pain very quickly. Like, as human beings, and both emotional and physical. Like, you'll be in pain, and you're really, like, when you're in pain, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm right here, right now. You're very aware of time and the moment that you're in. But as soon as it's over, you forget all about it, I mean, that's why I get all these tattoos, It's like, yeah, it fucking hurts when you do it, but then it's afterwards you forget all about it hurting, and then you just go about your day and you have a cool tattoo now, It's like, that's a real thing. And so people do that with emotional pain as well. It's like when you get 10 years away from something, it's like, oh, you forget about all the shitty stuff that was going on because you don't want to think about it. You want to bury that shit. You don't want to think about that. You just want to think about the good times, And so then, so that's what it is. It's an illusion that we tell ourselves, and like we have the story of this past that we're connected to. And we all do it, and that's fine, but we just need to become more aware of it, just become more aware of it, and also just become more aware of who's using it to control you with, like who's trying to manipulate you with your emotions, like that's really important to become aware of that. Also, I thought it was interesting that he had 5 Sweet Chariot chewing sugar cubes in his pocket, and like this guy who's like, I'm on the street. He's like, his heels aren't touching and he's chewing on sugar, like he's in the shit, like he's in the grime. He's a gross outfit that's stored in the trash, and he's just a trash person. He lives a trash life. He's a sandwich board man. He's just like a fucking next to vagrant, almost like kind of almost homeless person. Vagabond type, but he's still chewing sugar, like, oh, give me those sweets, let me forget about how fucking shitty everything is. Because I get that. Sugar is a drug, and I'm addicted to it, and I'm very conscious of my sugar intake, and it drives me crazy. Like, I've been trying to cut down on my sugar intake for years now, and it's so hard. It's so hard. But it's like, you gotta have some sort of vice, though, and that's the thing. But the thing is, though, is like, if that's Rorschach's vices, is chewing a little bit of sugar and, like, wearing a little bit of high heels, then, like, I think he's fucking fine. He's doing great. He's doing great. He's doing great, guys. Rorschach looks like he's a mess. He's not. If that's all he needs to get through the day, you know, then, like, I think he's doing great. So, yeah. All right, guys. I know. Even Rorschach has the sweet tooth, you know. It's also, yeah, you're true. It is also for energy. But, I don't know. And it's also called Sweet Chariot, which reminds me of, like, Amazing Grace, you know, where it's like, sweet chariot coming for to carry me home, you know, and it's about dying and being released from the bondage of being on this mortal plane and being a slave, you know, and, like, getting to go home and be free of these mortal chains. So, and death is sweet. Death is something that's supposed to be sweet, where it is a release, and it is like, you're done. Whew, you know, you can kind of relax. It's over, you know. But I like that kind of symbolism. He might be poking that in there. So before we get into our Q&As, we're going to play a couple of more clips, get some more Pop and More flavor in there. He's going to be talking about the atomic bomb. Here we go.
One of the things that hangs heavily over the heads of everybody is the nuclear issue, because for the first time there is a strong possibility of everybody dying on the same day. And I think that it's not stretching a point too far to say that if every concept you've ever loved, if every ideal you've ever cherished, every person, every institution could be completely levelled and wiped away as if it had never been within the next 4 minutes, then what wouldn't you do? When you see the whole world geared up for that sort of act of mass destruction, then a Charles Manson or a Richard Speck or a Yorkshire Ripper becomes the merest bumbling amateur. It doesn't even matter whether we ever fire these missiles or not. They are having their effect upon us now, because there are a generation growing up who cannot see beyond the final exclamation mark of a mushroom cloud. There are a generation who can see no moral values that do not end in a crackling crater somewhere. I'm not saying that nuclear bombs are at the root of all of it, but I think that it's very, very naive to assume that you can expose the entire population of the world to the threat of being turned to cinders without them starting to act perhaps a little oddly. And during the course of writing it, I found myself thinking, if that's true, if I could be gone, completely gone, within the next 2 minutes, then I wanted to be very, very sure that I felt okay with myself and with the world. I believe, in some sort of strange fashion, that the presence of the atom bomb might almost be forcing a level of human development that would not have occurred without the presence of it.